We'll give it a shot. God damn it. We'll do it live.
Do I have to say all the same shit again?
Word for word, Kelly. Don't fuck it up. Oh, but I don't think it cross-posted.
Those motherfuckers.
Oh, well. All right, so I don't know what happened there, but the feed like froze, and then I tried to go live again, and it gave me an error I'd never seen before. It basically said that we can't go live, so we couldn't create an event for this podcast. We couldn't share it into a single group, and then after they shut it down, they wouldn't allow us to go live again. But now,
are we live now?
Yeah, we're live.
We're live
now.
again.
We think we are.
We were resurrected.
Yeah, we're live again.
So there we go.
Like
we were dead, and now we're alive.
We're like Lazarus.
We are.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to share it into a group again and see what it
The
says.
Lazarus Project is right here.
Nope, action blocked. You have been temporarily blocked from performing this action.
That will show you.
Unbelievable, dude. All right, so hopefully you guys saw that last video.
They block you, King
Ron?
We'll play it again just in case.
Try.
This was the officer that we showed you the video earlier of him with the veteran.
That likes to pull guns on people.
Yeah, so this is a separate incident.
In plain clothes, in broad daylight.
I wonder why he felt so threatened that he had to pull his gun out.
Vallejo police officer David McLaughlin is seen here off duty with his gun drawn in the middle of Walnut Creek's Encina Grande shopping center. You can see people walking around.
Record this! Get on the ground. Go!
This video, obtained exclusively by 2 investigators, is from August 11th. Santiago Hutchins says he arrived at a pizzeria to celebrate his son's birthday when McLaughlin was leaving.
We made eye contact, locked eyes. He asked me what I was looking at. So I approached him and see what his problem was. I said, what? We got into a verbal altercation. At that point, he pulled out his gun.
Can someone call 911?
Yeah. The guy Mad Dogged him over some pepperoni on a pizza or pineapple on a pizza. And to go
I was heated, so I kept arguing with him. He said he later identified himself as a cop, but he still had me at gunpoint.
Eyewitnesses say it wasn't clear McLaughlin was an officer, and the gun, in their opinion, escalated the situation.
I think he shouldn't have had his gun out so quickly.
I never heard him say he was a cop. In fact, I never heard him say anything, to be really honest with you. He just had the gun aimed.
Bystanders called 911. Walnut Creek police arrived, and video shows them take down Hutchins with the help of an off-duty deputy. Officer McLaughlin, in the white T-shirt, joins in, throwing in punches and elbows, leaving Hutchins's face bloody.
There we go. Yes. It gets him. The guy's like, what a coward.
Now, 4 months after this incident, McLaughlin finds himself under fire again, this time in Vallejo on January 22nd, where video shows him draw his gun during a traffic stop. He then approaches the driver's cousin, Adrian Burrell, who's recording from his front porch.
No, get back. Nope. Keep your hands where you can see him. Keep your hands right up. You're interfering with me, my man. You're interfering, so you're going to go in the back of the car.
That's fine.
Okay. Dude, stop resisting.
I'm not resisting you.
Stop resisting.
I'm not resisting. Put me on the ground.
If you keep fighting me, I will.
I'm not fighting.
Burrell says the struggle left him with a concussion. He says McLaughlin's tone changed when he learned Burrell was a Marine veteran.
You must remain aware that when you see a video, you are not, just like me, aware of all the factors involved in that incident. And there are a great many variables that can produce an officer to display a weapon.
We showed Burrell video of what happened in Walnut Creek.
What does it take for somebody to give somebody like me the benefit of the doubt?
Burrell says maybe it's Vallejo police who should stop giving McLaughlin the benefit of the doubt. 2 investigators found McLaughlin has a past. He left Oakland Police and joined Vallejo PD in 2014. He's been involved in 2 shootings, and in 2014 was accused of falsifying a police report. Burrell's attorney says McLaughlin has been sued for racial profiling.
Do you think your client's incident was a one-off thing?
No, I don't. I absolutely don't. When the name came up, I was not surprised.
How much proof does it take? Like, what do you want? Like, how you want a couple bodies?
Internal Affairs is looking into both the Walnut Creek and Vallejo incidents. We just checked, and Officer McLaughlin is still working and is still on patrol.
This is the thin blue line, man. This is the police war against the people. They keep these guys going, knowing that they're dangerous and putting citizens at risk.
The thing is, on that pizza video, you don't know that, because the video doesn't show everything. You don't know that right before that he had ordered pizza and breadsticks, and they only brought him the pizza. So you know, it's not his fault that he had to pull a gun on a guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, because video doesn't show exactly what happened.
All right, I just checked the feed. I'm hoping it looks like it's working. And it's just so sketchy. I don't know what's going on. Fuck Zuck keeps fucking with us, but I don't know where the last feed cut off, so we're gonna start again.
The rumor that I heard is that Zuckerberg personally is in his office right now, pushing buttons to get us fucking thrown off.
He's clogging the tubes that carry the internet.
I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's a rumor that I started.
So again, these are the shirts that we had made.
Oh yeah, let's do that. And you know, if you're interested, you know, please support. Buy one. They'll be up on our site very shortly. We got the back with the donut cop, and the front we have the dancing pigs. So you get everything in one shirt.
Yep.
And you'll be the envy of all your friends and neighbors.
So we're gonna be opening a Patreon account. So if you become a patron for as little as $1 a month, you'll have access to exclusive content. We'll be recording, you know, at least 10 minutes at the end of every show every week. That if you donate at least $1 a month, you'll be able to watch that. You'll be able to have access to all the links to all the articles we talk about. And then when we go to special events like last week, before we went to the press conference where we were arrested at, we went to Coffee with the Cops, and you'll be able to see that interview there. We'll post that up on there. So as soon as we have that Patreon up and running, we'll post a link on our Facebook, if Facebook will allow us to.
Yep.
If we get enough donations that we could afford to buy coffee, we'll have coffee with Cop Block sometime.
That's right. And remember that the Patreon, the lowest level is less than a cup of coffee.
Right.
Less than a cup of coffee. You guys, you know, head out there.
I'm a little disappointed. I waited and jackhammered that Tears of a Clown joke in, and now it's not even on this video.
Oh, yeah. Guys, you missed a really good one.
Yeah, so go back to the other video and watch that.
That's right.
Yes.
That's top tier, though.
Yeah, we're also going to have tiers, different tiers on Patreon. So
Tears of a Clown.
Exactly.
The more that you, the more you pledge to contribute every month, like you get a T-shirt, or you'll get, you know, stickers, buttons.
A clown that comes to your house.
A real clown.
Yeah, different stuff. So.
Coming to your house to cut onions at the Tears of a Clown level.
Yes.
This, I don't know if you guys saw when we covered this on the last episode, but before we were so rudely interrupted, former NYPD officer gets up to 15 years in prison for fatal DWI crash.
Which you'll never see. You'll see like 5, and then whatever time. You know, they can shave off that. Even though he's a murderer, he was drunk and jumped the curb in an SUV. Happens a lot. Happens more often than ever should.
Yeah. So, killed a 21-year-old, Andrew Esquivel. Sophia was injured, her legs and arms, multiple fractures. Divya, 20 years old, suffered trauma to both legs and arms, plus a pelvic fracture. And James Balkanis, then 24, suffered serious leg injuries. So 3 injured, 1 killed by this officer who was driving drunk.
Right. You would think that the pigs would know better because they are out there doing DUI arrests. They know and seen crashes. So they know the trauma.
And they're in New York City where there's
devastation.
50 billion cabs. You can't fucking walk without stepping over a cab.
Yeah, I wonder how many people he's arrested for DUI, you know?
Yep.
This was shared by Kelly on our NV Cop Block Facebook page. This is from the Huffington Post. Portland Police Sergeant to his precinct. If a homeless person is black, just shoot him. So I saw a lot of people were sharing this out. Thankfully, people are getting this story out there. But Sergeant Greg Lewis.
Real piece of work.
Real piece of work. If you take the time to check this article out, there's some pretty crazy shit that he said, and then he said, fuck it, what do I care, like saying after he said this shit.
Right.
And the big kicker here is he's fighting the firing and may be able to retire with his pension.
Exactly. So you have the policeman's, the police union to thank for things like that. So when he gets his check.
Yeah.
The others in Portland, that guy's a supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
So the other story, I'm not sure if it made it onto our last live stream, but was this one here. Brooklyn inmates were freezing in jail, in this federal jail. Yeah. And you could hear them calling and begging for help. So the community rallied behind them because, loved ones started to wonder, why haven't I received a call from my son or, my husband or
Well,
whoever.
my question is who rescued the guards? Because it doesn't sound like they were suffering much. So I guess their heat was working.
No, they were able to wear Parkers and long johns.
Yeah. So the families and protesters ended up storming the federal jail.
More power to the people.
That's right. Because they were lacking heat and electricity. So they couldn't make phone calls. They couldn't contact their counsel regarding their cases. And luckily, they didn't freeze to death.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, yeah. Who knows?
We have no idea yet what the final outcome is going to be.
Yeah, because it was outdoor temperatures were well below freezing on some days. And they had no heat in the facility for a week.
Right, and they, we didn't hear if they provided blankets or any sort of warmth, so it's very easy to get hypothermia, even inside a building when temperatures are so low in those brutally, brutally cold New York winters.
One inmate was able to call through the window of his cell, and his mother was down there. She was crying and upset, so she tried to enter the facility after visiting hours, and activists and media followed her into the lobby, and they all pushed through the metal detectors, and that's when police started, using force, pepper spraying, and beating people out of there. But the happy ending to this story is this video here. They have power again. So they now have heat. It's just beautiful seeing all those people out there, rallying for sure. Good stuff. I don't know if this made it onto the last feed, but
this dipshit.
This fucking dude.
What a dipshit. Oh my God.
So, police corrections officer fired bullets into Columbus bedroom where kids were sleeping.
There we go. He's responsible for
they have a bit of
the
history of
well-being of people in custody.
Well, they have a bit of history of murdering children in Ohio, so,
That's true, too.
I mean, you got to keep that tradition going if you're down there.
2 children were sleeping in there. One of the bullets lodged into a toy. Thankfully, the children weren't injured. Yeah. But this dude tried to alter the scene of the crime and lied to authorities about what happened. So, a cover-up. He did get charged. Who knows what'll...
I did hear that Elmo did testify after he was injured doing this. That's what I heard.
Yeah, it's tickle me Elmo, not shoot me in the head Elmo.
This was just a crazy story. But this wasn't here in the U.S., but I think it was in England. Homeless man was doused in lighter fluid and set on fire as he slept. God, they got enough pop-ups on here.
Well, unfortunately, that's not an isolated thing. That's something that happens.
It happens in the U.S. quite often. Unfortunately, we had somebody in our own neighborhood who took it upon themselves to go and attack homeless people with a hammer and murder them. So,
yeah, and he was like a serial killer. It was more than one homeless person, yep. Yep, that's what happens when the media and, people just dehumanize, these human beings, to the point where they just don't even see them anymore, step over them, walk past them like they don't even exist.
Because you're poor, you hold no value in the society, and allows you to do terrible things.
Yeah. Kind of related to this, I saw that, what is it? Sesame Street is going to have a homeless Muppet.
No.
But then
His
I saw...
name's not Grouch.
Yeah, that's what somebody brought to my
Oscar
attention.
the Grouch already isn't homeless. He's living in a fucking garbage can.
Which I always kind of assumed that, yeah.
So somebody pointed that out.
And nobody
to me.
gave a fuck. They're all just like, hey, you're great in your fucking garbage can.
Yeah, basically, he was the first homeless person, and look how they portrayed him as a piece of trash,
But they did always interact with them. They didn't avert their eyes, and he was part of the community.
But the way, they
nobody brought him in, though.
Nobody set him on fire. Well,
that's another
give him
good
that.
thing.
Yeah, not like these people in Coventry.
Mr. Hooper never brought him into the store, and,
So, the other one, this is another
I hope Sesame
global
Street's going to
news
have a
story.
Food Not Bombs after this. In fact, we should start that. We should start a Facebook group called Sesame Street Food Not Bombs. Food Not Bombs Sesame Street.
I bet they'd be on board with that. I think that's something that they would probably do. Or maybe not now, but I know in the old days they probably would.
Well, I know Food Not Bombs wants to be like vegetarian or vegan, but I'm thinking like with Big Bird, you got them big ass eggs. You can feed a lot of people with that shit.
No, that would be vegetarian if they... Though Big Bird is male, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any eggs coming that way, but I could be mistaken. I'm not sure.
I'm sure he's got a big birdette or something. I don't know.
Edmonton police officer disciplined for pushing man downstairs at detox center. So this was a brutal story, but long story short, the guy went to court, the officer, for disciplinary, I guess, pushed him down these stairs, and he flew over some stairs and then fell down the rest of them. And it was an indigenous guy that this RCMPD officer in Canada pushed down the stairs. Luckily, he survived.
They have quite a history in Canada with their indigenous population, just as brutal as ours, and continuing to be brutal.
Absolutely.
To the indigenous folks there.
So luckily there was security camera footage because this guy tried to lie about it, and the footage showed clearly that he pushed him hard down these stairs.
It's the dehumanization again.
But then you look at the headline, so it says he's disciplined, but then you get all the way down to the bottom of the article. It's like, so what happened to this officer?
What happened
to
this
officer?
officer?
Decision on what penalty the constable will face will be released at a later date.
Yeah.
So he was disciplined? Well, what was
he wasn't removed.
Unbelievable.
His wrist was very red when he walked out of the room.
Why are we hearing, did an angel get his wings?
This was crazy. Botched probe forces DA to drop charges against deputies accused of running Fight Club in San Francisco jail.
Forced him to.
So this was
there we go.
Numerous people over a few days span, I believe. But basically, they botched the probe, I'd say, on purpose, just so that these guys don't face charges, right?
Are you ready for Xfinity X5?
No, I'm not ready.
Super
for
fast speeds, enhanced coverage.
Fuck yeah. We're ready.
Wow, that sounds good, man. I'm hooked.
Yeah.
So somehow they botched the probe into their buddy who's facing charges.
Exactly.
And the DA has to just drop the charges.
So there is no justice for these inmates that were forced to fight each other.
Nope.
Yeah.
And those guys are probably still there, and they just, they've learned their lesson.
It's kind of like when
they won't get caught a second time.
It's kind of like when that one cop burned his trailer in his truck that he was behind payments on, and then somehow the video of him confessing to that he did got corrupted, and they couldn't present it at trial, so they had to let him go.
Yeah, man, I couldn't believe that he even tried it. I mean, he got away with it, but just the thought of that, It's so corrupt.
They were forced to battle gladiator style inmates were running this like bizarre fight club inside a county jail on the 7th floor.
It says inmates were
they
running it?
arranged and no, the guards were
The guards
running
were
it.
running it, yeah.
Arranged and gambled on fights between inmates during a 2-day period. Threatened inmates with violence or withheld food if they didn't fight each other for the deputies' amusement.
So I'm sure in that whole prison they couldn't find anybody who saw that happening. You know?
Then prosecutors learned some evidence was destroyed. A laptop hard drive containing important emails was allegedly destroyed by smashing it with a hammer.
It sounds like a tragic accident.
Right.
Oops.
That's a botched probe.
Yeah. Just
You know, folks,
I'm sure they couldn't track down who was responsible for that laptop at the time that happened, and who just happened to have a hammer in their back pocket.
I was wondering if that was part of the job trainings program for when the inmates are released, so they could go into gladiator fighting, which is, I don't think has been a thing since, the Romans and the Colosseum, but maybe they're trying to make a resurgence and bring it back.
All right, here's another quick story here. NYPD union leader slams report pushing to reveal disciplinary cases.
Which we talk about the union being one of the largest problems.
The union's a problem by design, because what they do is the police departments set up these unions. And they set up, it's like the good cop, bad cop thing. They set it up so the unions push the stuff that's unpopular, like not releasing discipline and smashing things with hammers when you're investigating. So they fight for these cops to get fired for misconduct. And what happens is the department doesn't want them to get punished either, but they don't want to come out and say that. So what they do is, it's just, in a lot of ways, it's like the grand jury. They're like, oh, well, we tried, but the union wouldn't let us.
Right.
That's why the police unions are the most powerful union in the entire country. No other union could get away with that. If you were a cook and you poisoned somebody, they wouldn't come along and fight for you to get your job back.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, just another obstacle to transparency and accountability here.
Which is why what we do is so important. This is why we are independent media and report on cases like this so people become aware. And, you could always call your local precincts when you see things that are, and make complaints and say, we're not accepting this. Call the jailhouses and say, we're aware, we've seen this, and we don't like it, and we want it to stop. The voice of the people can be heard. You saw outside that federal prison what the power of the people can do once they're informed about the issues.
Mm-hmm. And you can always find your local police departments or whichever police department that you're seeing something crazy happen, like when they throw reporters out of a press conference. You can find them on Twitter and Facebook and a lot of times Instagram and YouTube, and you can send messages there and
get the story out.
Yeah. At nothing else, you let them know that you're paying attention.
Exactly.
So this is another pedophile cop here. Police arrested officer for sexual exploitation of a minor. I don't even want to read the details on that one.
This is, another hero in blue.
This is on Nevada Cop Block site. If you guys want to check it, well, not the site, but the Facebook page. There was basically a university. You want to talk about this one, Kelly? Where the cops came to the...
Oh, yeah. So there was a snow day, and they were having a snowball fight, and the cops showed up and started spraying people with mace. And then they're like, oh, well, the students were out of control. Because...
That's, what they say. You never bring snowballs to a mace fight. You just always lose.
That's it. They're making it all like, oh, these kids did all these horrible things and were so out of control and everything. But, it's, kids having a snow fight. It's fucking college level people.
And then police state steps in and says, no, not here.
You're not.
Yeah, because classes were closed, right? So
yeah, and it's all the people sitting in the dorms that have nothing to do.
So they're like, fuck it, party. Police came and started shooting fucking pepper balls at them and shit.
And that's what you do when you're in college or you're fucking something. Like when we were in the military, we had a fucking typhoon came through Okinawa. And what we did is we went and bought a bunch of beer and sat in the dorm and fucking drank. And that's basically what you do.
Right, and these guys.
If it would have been a snow fight, a snow thing, we would have been out there throwing snowballs at each other.
Exactly.
Like you have nothing else to do.
That's what
everything's
kids
closed.
do.
Here's some footage of it real quick. That's not the video I saw.
And to be fair, they also erected an illegal snowman.
Look, they think they're fucking paintballing or something.
They didn't have a building permit. Well, they were shooting pepper balls at them, which is basically a paintball except with pepper spray inside it.
Yeah. Just crazy, dude.
They escalate violence every chance they get.
Here we go. Some officers faking overtime. Supervisors were complicit. Well, you'd think it was probably them who organized the whole scheme. Just crazy, man. That's your tax dollars getting wasted here.
That $200,000 a year they make isn't enough.
Yep. This is why ACAB.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, folks.
This is also, didn't you share this one too, Kelly, on Cop Block's Facebook? FBI investigating use of taser on 11-year-old girl. I thought I saw it on there.
Yeah. It's, wasn't it? It was at a Walmart.
Mm-hmm. And he was doing security.
Yeah. So he wasn't even, he was moonlighting as security, because he couldn't fake his overtime anymore.
Cleveland, Ohio, yeah.
I mean, you're talking about an 11-year-old kid and a girl. I mean,
when they're not out there molesting children, they're tasering them.
Well, that's the thing. If I was her parent, and I was in public, and I did that, they would put me in jail, and you'd
belong in jail. Yeah. I mean, you're
right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
you don't belong in civilized society.
Police can just go in and beat up women and children, and
well, that's true though. I mean, they do it to their own families. At a rate 3 times higher than the national average. So it's something they're used to is abusing family and children.
And then they're like, well, he was resisting while I tried to change his diaper,
An 11-year-old girl.
Tased in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the back, so.
Because she didn't stop when he told her to.
So that's the other thing is, he's too lazy to chase her.
Yeah.
It's not even like she was kicking him in the knee or something,
Child.
Yeah.
They're abusing our children. They're torturing our children.
Oh, this was crazy.
Why do we accept this behavior from them?
Undercover cops spend 6 months investigating a display of glass pipes. North Carolina police. There's got to be a better way to spend their time. Officer coerced 2 women into sex to avoid arrest. Haven't we covered a few stories like that by now?
Every week.
Yeah.
We could cover
multiple times.
We could cover one of those every day here in Vegas.
Yep.
If you go out nationwide, you could. Fuck.
This is constant.
Ashley, Pennsylvania. Yeah. Another one, folks.
The cop that they caught after 20 years when they somehow forgot to check his DNA sample.
Oh, right.
That's how he murdered the woman that he murdered.
Mm-hmm.
He was coercing prostitutes into sex.
This one's a criminally negligent cop claim Tide detergent is heroin. Kidnap and cage man for weeks. That's crazy.
Well, and if they're basing it off the drug kit, that's what that does. Is the drug kits are so inaccurate. Basically, anything you put in there is going to come up as accurate as drugs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even the drug sniffing dogs are trained to do hand commands.
They train them to react when they want them to.
Yeah. So the whole system is phony and fixed with that.
Yeah, just to justify what they do,
Mm-hmm.
It's all a show. There's a couple other stories here. Police allege mice ate half a ton of missing weed. I don't know where the weed went. I mean, mice must have ate it. Fuck.
Uh-huh.
Half a ton of
And then mice had
weed.
dreadlocks. They were wearing those fucking Jamaican hats.
Yep.
So it could be true.
So
They must have built up a hell of a tolerance.
Wasn't no Speedy Gonzales walking around with all that much fucking pot.
So this has been on the mainstream media, that shooting in Texas where the couple shot a few police officers.
Yep.
The details are coming out now, slowly but surely.
That's the one where the cop said, we're going to start tracking you if you report that we're doing stuff.
Yeah, basically they said, if you are critical of police, we've got your number and we'll be tracking you.
And setting you up.
How about we track you if you break into innocent people's houses and shoot them?
Yeah. Killed their dog.
They're good at that.
Them. Yeah. So this was a good article here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that's the whole
check
thing.
that
Is
out.
they broke into these people's houses, and these people had no criminal history, and weren't the people that didn't have drugs. It's a complete setup, and these people defended themselves because crazy people were breaking into their house, and they didn't know who the fuck they were.
Yeah, because they were in plain clothes. The first cop that came in.
And they don't identify themselves because they want to jump on somebody. They don't want them to know they're the cops.
Right.
Yeah.
If they identify themselves, it's very quickly so that you don't hear them.
Man jailed over a marijuana cookie died after seizure in prison. Just a failed war on drugs.
Well, this is what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that the deaths in prison, that there's so many questionable deaths. Never investigated. Nobody brings it up. If you don't have family members that are worried about you, man, or somebody on the outside, yeah, you disappear into the system, and whatever happens to you happens. There's no accountability.
Mm-hmm.
If you're taking marijuana to ease your seizures and get thrown in prison to die from a seizure.
And I'm sure, that was brought up, but they did the medical questioning. They asked you, do you take medication? And then, of course, they deny it or make you wait so long before you're able to receive it that you suffer from your ailment.
Another cop drinking and driving. This was in Utah. So just more hypocritical, double standard. Doubt he'll even get in trouble for it, but let's see. I forget, because there's so many cops that got DUIs this week that I forget which case this was.
Yeah. We need one of those tickers.
Okay, so he did get arrested. All right.
Or like when they have those shows like PBS where they're raising money and they're telethons.
Oh, yeah.
And they have like the little thing behind them that's got the numbers. Like we need one of those for like how many cops have been busted for DUI this year.
Right. Oh, so this was the chief of police too, and he was hauling ass. Didn't have his lights activated or his siren.
Which happened here. I think it's been about 10 years now.
Right. So he was in his police car while he was doing this.
Yeah, he was on duty
Yeah, there was
Nice.
a cop
What
who
a-
was flying at like 90 miles an hour with no lights on, and a guy went to turn left in front of him and didn't, realize he was going as
90.
fast.
Right.
And the cop hit him, and then they tried to charge the guy who hit him with DUI, and really demonized him. And then it came out like the next day that the guy wasn't drunk, and the cop didn't have his lights on.
Of course.
So this is kind of like an episode of Super Troopers or something. Like the highway patrol pulled over a city cop who was hauling ass drunk, and found out that he was the chief of police.
And
don't you know who I am?
He was struggling.
I know this. I know that. I could just hear it.
Right. He was struggling to maintain his lane, speeding.
Which also just happened in Minnesota. Again. Or Michigan, I mean. Michigan. Michigan's where the last two cops, they were like being like, "I'm a cop, just let me go," or on video doing that.
Yeah.
And one of them was the police chief, and actually I think he was a sheriff.
Right.
For another
And
town.
I mean, sometimes if the video's there, it can be leaked. But how many times, do they get that professional courtesy?
Well, that's pretty telling because a lot of times on those videos, in fact, those 2 videos, the cop's answer isn't, "I'm not going to let you go because it's wrong for you to be driving." It's going to be, "I can't let you go because I've already called this in."
Right. There's a record of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it's freezing up again. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully we still got audio here.
Audio.
Is it that polar vortex thing, or?
Oh, it could be. It is freezing.
Which I thought that was a train.
Or a movie.
A movie about a train.
Right.
This is Detroit cop celebrates Black History Month by forcing African American woman to walk home.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking ridiculous.
This
story
was
about
during the
racist
polar
prick.
vortex too.
And
yep. What a fucking piece of racist piece of shit.
Yeah, didn't just make her walk home in the snow, but filmed it.
And commented. Him and his buddy were commenting, and putting the pictures on, the phone while you're recording. You could, but there's nothing unusual about this. Nothing unusual at all. If you notice, there's usually a common theme that runs through this with white cops and people of color. You heard what the cop said, about the homeless people, and then you saw the girl that was tased in the back, and then this. So the history of racism and the police department are tied at the hip. What do they say? The cops and the Klan go hand in hand. And most of the stories that we do prove that. It's evident that we have a huge problem.
Yep. All over an expired license plate tag. So he made her leave the car there and walk. And then filmed it and mocked her on social media. Temperatures at the time were below freezing.
Which they could have let her drive home. She wasn't impaired. There wasn't a safety issue. They just did it to bust her chops and to have a laugh. Obviously, they thought it was funny.
They're evil, horrible people.
So he captioned the video, "What black girl magic looks like, celebrating Black History Month." What a fucking piece of shit.
So there's nothing, connotating racism about, him bringing up her being black and black history.
We've talked about this guy before too. Remember when he? This is the same guy that attacked his girlfriend and fired a gun next to her head. So he's still employed. If they'd have got rid of him, then this wouldn't even have happened. But
this is in his character, so you know that every stop that he does, this is in his character. Is suspect. His behavior is suspect.
So we kind of touched on this already, but yeah, it's come out that these this shooting, they didn't have any drugs on them, and the neighbors have come out to defend the couple that police killed. It's just a crazy, crazy situation, man. And just seeing how the story evolves from how it was first broke is just crazy. Black employee faced retaliation for complaining about Blue Lives Matter flag at work. Yeah. So this is the officer involved shooting. Okay, so we might as well get into the OISs. So the first OIS, officer involved shooting here in the Valley, happened almost 2 weeks ago now, and it was not yesterday, not last Monday, but the Monday before that. I actually went down there because I knew that the press conference was going to be that day, and I told him I wanted to attend. I've sent emails and talked on the phone to people and trying to find out when they're holding these press conferences. I talked to people with the Public Information Office, And in email, they told me that they were going to post something on their website. They never did. So I went down there when they opened on Monday and to attend the press conference, and they lied to my face and said that there is no press conference today. So, so I went home, and they held the press conference that day for the first officer-involved shooting. So they lied to me and held the press conference.
Yeah. So you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they never said to you, "There's this process you have to go through to get approved to go to their press conferences," or
no.
Certain people, have applied this and are waiting approval or whatever.
And they didn't give you a website to check if you're on the Federal Registry of
right.
approved media.
If you're on the federal listing of who is or isn't media.
Right.
Yeah, so I've been sending them emails since last year, letting them know that who I'm with and that I'm trying to cover these officer-involved shooting press conferences every time that they happen. And they told me first, they said that it was going to be available on their website. They'd let me know on the website a couple hours before the press conference when it's going to be. So after that first one, officer-involved shooting this year, when they didn't post anything, I went down there. Then they lied to me. So I called them up after I saw the video on YouTube, and I was like, hey, whoever spoke to me, I believe it was you, lied to me and said that there was going to be something on social media and on the website, and there was nothing. And she goes, oh, hold on, I've got another call. Put me on hold for like 5 minutes, and I just hung up. So basically just lied to me, and then when I call them out on it, they blow me off, And then...
And never once disputed the idea that you were allowed to attend, just like gave you a runaround. So
no, they're just dragging me along. They making me feel like you can come to these conferences for sure, but then never tell me when it is, and keep giving me different answers every time I ask the question. So first it's going to be on the website, then it's going to be on Instagram, then it's going to be on Facebook, and they never posted about any of them. So. We went to coffee with the cops last Wednesday, and
North Las Vegas,
and because they just killed somebody, so we wanted to talk to them about that. After that ended, I'm like, man, the press conference for Metro's second officer-involved shooting has got to be today. It's been 72 hours. I want to go and try to attend, so I called a local journalist that covers this kind of thing, and she told me, it's today at 10:30. So it was 10 o'clock at the time, so we headed on over there from the coffee with the cops, and I just walked right in, and then the guy who runs it sends out the emails for the email list that I was told on the phone that I need to get on that email list, so I emailed them to be added to that list. And he's like, hey, so did everybody get my emails? Obviously, because you're here. And I was like, oh, well, I would like to get on that email list because I didn't get it. And he's like, oh, you can't be here. I'm like, what do you mean I can't be here? And then that's where the live stream picks up here. So we'll play that for you guys.
And before we start that, the thing is, we routinely attend Coffee with the Cop and other media-related events and community events.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll ask them to do interviews, or we'll just question them on certain things. And we've never had an issue. We've never been disruptive. The only time we've ever had where there was any sort of incident was when they just kind of bailed out and left the Starbucks. And even then, there was no sort of hostile encounter. So, one of their implied contentions is that we came there to disrupt the event, and that's not what would happen.
No, our history proves otherwise.
You had no intentions. I've never gone anywhere. I've never gone to a protest. I've never done any event where I went with the intention to cause a problem, to be violent, or to be arrested. I don't like being arrested. It's not something that I want to do.
Yeah.
There's certain things that I'm willing to get arrested for if it push comes to shove and they try to violate my rights. But that's not me wanting to be arrested. That's me standing up for my constitutional rights.
Yeah, I went there to report on it just like every other press that was there. You know what I mean? I wanted to document the event, film it. So I brought my camera. I brought a microphone, and I didn't even have a chance to set it all up because this guy told me
We weren't allowed in.
I was already in, but he told me I wasn't allowed to stay.
We got there slightly behind you, so we were kind of in the doorway, but not in the room.
Which they blocked the doorway and prevented us from entering as press.
But the other thing is, if we
informed
were
them that we were press,
if we were going to disrupt it, they easily could have just let us in the room, instead of punishing us for something we hadn't actually done, which which is illegal and unconstitutional. You're not allowed to punish somebody for something that you presume they're going to do. So the thing about that is, if we would have became disruptive, they could have thrown us out of there. They could have banned us from coming to the press events, and nobody would have complained about that. They would have been completely in the right, and we would have been looking like the bad guy the whole time.
Yeah.
And the thing was that it wasn't overflowing with press or other press or other people.
It was like 4 rows of chairs that were completely empty.
Yeah. It was very empty. There was space. So it wasn't a matter of picking and choosing, all the chairs are taken up, all the space is taken up. We have to determine who should be allowed in and who not. It's just overcrowded. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
It was virtually empty. Empty.
And for people who have claimed that we're just criminals, I have a completely clean police record or criminal record.
Yeah.
The only 3 times that I've been arrested at this point, including the last time, were for legally protesting, riding on the sidewalk with chalk, and for legally filming in public the police arresting someone. Both those cases were thrown out before they ever went to trial. There wasn't even a hearing on them. In fact, they never even filed the charges on the one with the filming. And then this case where it's First Amendment right to act as media, which I've been doing for over 7 years here in Las Vegas. I've written both at Nevada Cop Block, at the main Cop Block site, and as a freelancer at several other sites. In fact, if you include freelance that's not police related, you could go back about probably 10 years that I've been acting as media. So, this idea that we're just some random people that came running in the room to disrupt it is complete nonsense.
Yeah, it was foolishness on their part.
Yeah, I mean, even on the trespassing ticket here.
We'll pull that up.
And if they had told us, you can't come in today because there's this process that you have to apply to be approved, we would have went through that process and waited, and if they didn't approve us, then we would have dealt with it that way, legally, through the courts. But they never did that.
No.
They never denied it. In fact, they, from what I'm hearing from Joey, they implied that he was able.
Yeah.
They never gave him any indication that he was not allowed to go to the.
No. They just said that we'll let you know when it's going to be, and
you
can come. So on here, it even says on the trespass citation, being issued due to entry into restricted area for mischief. So
the area's not restricted.
First of all, it's public property. There's
no signs.
No, when you first walk in, there's double doors ahead of you that says restricted area.
Right.
If you go through there, that's not public property.
There are signs indicating restricted areas, and that's not one of them.
Right.
Yeah, so if you go left, right next to the restrooms in the main lobby, on your left is the media room. And there's nothing on the doors or anything on the walls that says restricted area, because it's not a restricted area. So, and then it says for mischief. We didn't go there to cause any mischief or disruption. Like, they became disruptive when they tried to unlawfully remove me. Well, not try to. They forcibly removed me, violated my civil rights to do so. I just went there, to ask them the difficult questions
which we always do.
Yeah, we're watchdog journalists. We're not lapdog journalists.
Nice.
And that's what they want.
That.
They want lapdogs. They want little parakeets and parrots that are going to parrot their police narratives, and we're there to challenge that. So I was going to film the whole event, and then when they were done, there's a Q&A session at the end. So whenever there's something fishy, you can ask them questions. Which
is
this
what-
shooting in particular, there was a lot of questions that should have been asked. And of course, since we were thrown out,
When they were
the
asked.
media that was left didn't ask those questions. You know, for example, the cop that shot at the suspect said that he saw the man on top of the woman trying to strike her with a hatchet. There was no hatchet. He didn't have a weapon at all. He had a walking cane, and he wasn't on top of the woman when he fired at her. You see from the body cam footage, he was on top of a wall trying to flee when the officer shot at him.
And these are questions that need to be asked.
And they weren't. So I'm gonna take the footage of the questions that were asked from the press conference that we were kicked out of, because one of them, the guy's like, okay, I wanted to ask you, I forgot my question. Like, so that's one journalist. Then the other guy goes, so did he, like, basically asked a question that the officer had already answered. So it's like, what are you even there
And
for?
that's not
if
unusual.
No,
It
that's
seems like
the majority
sometimes-
of the questions are questions that were already answered. So it's like, it makes it appear like they're holding them accountable and being transparent, but they're not.
Well, sometimes
asking
it seems
real
like
questions.
they're planting questions, like they want a
Mhm.
certain question answered so they can answer it a certain way.
It makes total sense. Like, I mean, I remember there's one like, do you think it was suicide by cop? So it's like the
Planting the
police
seed.
can't say that. They can't say, oh, it was obviously suicide by cop, but they can get the media to ask that kind of question.
And then plant the seed.
Exactly. And then the other thing, they just had their third officer-involved shooting press conference. I think it was yesterday. In the first officer-involved shooting, he wouldn't say whether or not it was fatal. In the second officer-involved shooting, they always say how many were fatal and how many were not. So they said this is the second OIS, first fatal. First non-fatal, implying that the first one was fatal. So first they say it wasn't fatal, then in the second one they say that there has been a fatal one, and then on this most recent one, the third officer-involved shooting this year, they said that there were 3 non-fatals. So it's like, which was it? It was non-fatal, it was fatal, now it's non-fatal again, and that
This
just goes
is-
right over the head of the local media. They don't even ask them that.
I don't think it goes over their head. I think they intentionally don't ask those questions, and it's important. We're citizens in these communities. We interact with these police officers all the time. They're the ones on patrol. We need to know what's happening because this is our lives, the lives of our family, the lives of our other community members. To be ignorant and let them slide on these issues is not responsible. You're not being a responsible citizen. You know.
Well, that's why there's the highest distrust for mainstream media ever right now. I think it's something like 3 out of 4 people don't trust the mainstream media, and it's because these mainstream journalists, because they don't do their job anymore.
They have an agenda sometimes.
They
That's
don't
not
do
to
any
inform-
investigations.
Yeah, their agenda is not to inform the public.
No, they've become a public relations arm of, in this case, the police.
Which is why what we do is so important when we attend.
Mm-hmm.
We attend peacefully. We intend to ask relevant questions. We've never had an issue, during any of our events when we're asking questions with the officers, especially, when they hold media events. We go down, we attend. So there's something else was going on here that was not usual. Not the traditional way that they deal with us. They usually will sit, answer questions. In North Las Vegas, the officer that was there even, had to double check with his superiors whether he can give an interview with us or not. And he was given the authorization to speak with us on record as a news source. So,
yeah. I think they like this setup where it's invite only, not only because they'll only invite loyal, media members that have proven themselves loyal, right? But also because it is a deterrent from real journalists. Say if the RJ hired a really good journalist that started to ask real questions. Well, then they just don't invite them next time. And that's a deterrent from people that are allowed to attend these to not ask the difficult questions out of fear of not being invited to the next press conference, right? So
yeah, when they make it an exclusionary thing, then they have that they can hold over the reporters. And also, they got caught in a couple lies during the Route 91 press conferences.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I remember they banned what's her name, right? Laura Loomer from attending because Joe Lombardo had to change the timeline of the shooting because of
3 times
the digging that she did, and that's what it takes. It takes independent alternative media to hold them accountable because we're willing to ask those difficult questions. That's why they don't want us there. I mean, plain and simple. And then like the most recent officer involved shooting, the third one already this year. So it's 3 in the first month. That's crazy. So they're already on track to have the most deadliest year if it keeps at this pace. But at this third officer involved shooting, they didn't even have any body cam footage to play. They played audio of radio traffic. They played like a 1-second clip from a neighbor's cell phone that showed the car like backing into the officer's car, but you couldn't even tell it was an officer's car because they were all in plain clothes. They were all in unmarked vehicles. So they claim that the suspect pointed, or didn't even point it at them, but grabbed an air rifle from the passenger's seat. So that's when they all shot him. 3 officers shot him. He was shot twice, once in the face and once somewhere else. Survived. But basically, there's no proof. There's nothing to show that he even touched that gun. I mean, if he was shot twice, there'd be blood on the gun, right? There's no blood on this gun. There was just no evidence. No evidence other than the officer's words.
Right, other than the officer's words. And as you can see from our past stories, some officers fail to tell the truth. And they intentionally, file false reports. I'm not saying that happened in this case, though we've seen it many, many times. So, so these questions have to be asked.
Yeah.
They have to be asked.
And just to be clear, when we're questioning official police narratives, we're not taking the side of suspects. If there's a lot of times the people that are a part of these shootings are real dirtbags, right? Sometimes they're not. But we're not taking sides. We're just asking the difficult questions. We want to ask the difficult questions to get to the truth, because that's what our job is to figure out the truth and relay that to the people. And, I think it's important to point out that journalism isn't a profession, right? It's an action that you engage in. So you're a journalist if you are filming an event, documenting an event, and then report on it later. You know what I mean? You are engaged in the act of journalism. As long as you have an audience that, there's a demand for your material, then you're a journalist. Anybody can be a journalist. It's a personal right. It's an individual right. It's not confined to somebody who has a TV channel or a radio station or a newspaper. You know what I mean? It's everybody on American soil has the freedom of press. Anybody can be press. So that's important for people to understand, because they're trying to flip it and say that, no, we control who is press and who's not. We get to say who is and who's not, and you're not.
They control the flow of ideas.
There's also legal precedent that they cannot say, your platform. So they can't say you have to be print media. You have to be news media on the television or the radio. You can't just be a blogger, because they've tried to exclude people. There was a case against the NYPD specifically about that, based on, you're only an online paper, which there's, a pretty prevalent thing now. Like, in fact, the Huffington Post doesn't put out a newspaper.
Right.
I mean, they're online. So that's not even, I mean, at this point, that's not even a consideration of whether you're media or not.
Yeah.
They also can't consider what's called editorial direction, but they cannot say, we don't like the articles that you write about us, so we're going to exclude you.
Mhm.
You know, a public entity has to give equal access to the media, and it has to be transparent, and it has to be equally applied. You can't say, I don't like you because you criticize the police. You don't criticize the fire department, which was actually said. The guy actually asked, like, why don't you criticize the firemen?
Mhm.
You know, and there's a saying that you know, there's no, you know, fuck the firemen. You know,
Right.
Like, that's not a song, and there's a
Yeah.
reason for that. You know, they show up and they put your fire out. They don't spray your dog with their hose.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Well, and then they only come when people call. You know what I mean? They're not out
And
patrolling,
by the way,
looking for people to.
if you search on mvcoplog.org for fire department, you'll find a couple stories where I've criticized the fire department, because I criticize police-related stuff and government corruption. So if the firemen are out drinking and driving and the cops let them go because they also work for the government, I'm going to criticize the fuck out of both the police and the fire department
Mhm.
Right.
for letting that happen.
Yeah. So then the NRS, they didn't tell us the NRS as they're arresting us. Like I said, so what's the NRS?
We asked many times.
Yeah, and all he says is it's trespass, and noted the trespass NRS. But no, we were asking for the NRS specifically saying that we aren't press and we can't be there. So after they released us, they gave us this 26-page thing here.
It has nothing to do with the press.
No,
it's about felony background checks.
Assembly Bill number 76, Committee on Corrections, Parole, and Probation. It's an act relating to records of criminal history, revising provisions governing requirements for the submission of information in the Central Repository for Nevada Records of Criminal History. So it has nothing to do with press conferences or determining who's media or who's not media. This is about who is entitled to access to criminal history records, which you don't need a law for that. Anything that's public information is public information, right? So they give us some bullshit packet that has nothing to do with what we were doing, and trying to cite an NRS that's not about press freedoms or lack thereof. It's about access to criminal records.
But also to make a very clear point, even if you had that law, you cannot pass unconstitutional laws.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but they're not enforceable. You can't enforce them. They'll be overturned. Just because you say something is against the law doesn't make it if it's in conflict with your rights.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one of the things about unconstitutional laws is somebody actually has to suffer consequences as a result of that law in order to challenge it.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe he printed the wrong NRS out, or so
maybe
if there is
just
actually, I think he just lied, but if there is actually an NRS, which I haven't been able to find one, that describes who is media and who is not media, then it's a good thing that this happened, because we will be the ones that will be able to challenge it in court and set a precedent here in Nevada so that this doesn't happen to anyone else in the future, because a free press is essential to a healthy civilization, of
liberty.
Well, and that's one of the things,
society,
like,
yeah.
in the beginning of my video, you can hear him. He says, you're not legitimate. And I'm like, well, how are you making that determination? And he's,
the NRS.
Well, there's
yeah.
an NRS. And I said, well, first of all, there's the First Amendment, which supersedes NRSs.
Right.
Because it's a state
Yeah, you're
law,
like, are you familiar with the First Amendment?
Right. And then on top of that, like, he would never give me an NRS, and he's all like, well, afterwards. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'll be here waiting.
Yeah.
But on top of that, also he says, like, oh, you have to be on a federal registry, which is not a thing.
And if there was, you should
that
be
would
scared
be
to
unconstitutional if they had a registry of. I mean, even if you didn't think it was wrong for them to exclude certain people, like having a list of all the media so that they could go and track somebody down anytime they don't like what they wrote. I mean,
right, or exclude. Or use it to exclude media that may be
not even to
critical.
exclude. If they have a listing of who is or is not media, And
Right.
you write an editorial that they don't like, and they can go to your house and roust you because they don't
Yeah.
like what you wrote.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
a database
that's
that
a
you
whole
don't
different
want
level
to exist. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Which
So,
is,
beyond the exclusionary part of it being unconstitutional, the fact that they would have a registry of who is media is
Yeah, you don't
like,
want
is a
that.
scary thought.
There's a reason why there's no, agency or licensing bureau or anything like that run by the government to determine who is or is not press, because they can't. It's not constitutional for government to determine that. That's not. It's a personal freedom. So in what was it? Brandsburg versus Haynes, there was a Supreme Court justice who said, who ruled on that, and in his opinion in that ruling, he said that it's individual liberty. It's a personal freedom. It's not only for people who are a part of an association like the AP, the Associated Press, or some sort of, I don't know,
Club?
a journalists union or TV station. That's not how it works. So, yeah, so I guess we can go ahead and play the live stream for people that might not have seen it yet. But, it looks like...
I don't know how long
time
yours
we
is,
have.
but mine's like 10 minutes long, so...
And that's something that they will be able to access for sure.
Yeah, we're already... It's already time, so we have it on all of our Facebook pages. You can see the live stream. You can see the GoPro footage. So, yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Is there any events anybody wants to plug real quick?
Yeah, we didn't